All right, thanks so much for being with us here on Atlanta News First Plus. I shared with you a little bit earlier this newly released body cam footage showing the arrest of the alleged Midtown Atlanta shooter. This was released just a short time ago, and we're gonna kind of unpack this a little bit, but I want to take the opportunity to bring in a very special guest joining us today. We have attorney Suri Chada Jimenez, who specializes in criminal law. Thank you so much for being with us. So I'd like to just kind of pick your brain as we watch this really dramatic video, which shows officers, it's going to show officers rushing into the Northside Medical Midtown, searching the hallways, running upstairs, searching for the suspected shooter. We now know that Deon Patterson's facing a murder charge and 4 counts of aggravated assault. So the question for you is, what's next in the justice process?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Also a pleasure to be here. The next step is going to be for this person to be charged, formally charged. He's already had first appearance. I believe that his appearance was waived. I think that he was in the medical unit. There's obviously some mental health issues that we've all heard about. So after first appearance, the next step is to schedule a preliminary hearing. But most likely, his attorneys will request a mental health evaluation before anything happens so that the court can determine whether or not this person is capable to stand trial.
And so there's that competence. Look at this. I mean, you can't help but look at this video. I mean, that's what we want our viewers to do, is check out this video. If you haven't done it already, go to atlantanewsfirst.com and you can actually see this dramatic video. Now you can see officers rushing up the stairs, and they ended up going, door to door, room to room, looking for the shooter, looking for if there were any people in harm's way, to get them out as well. Look at this. But Suri, as we continue talking about this, you've said that this suspect, this defendant now, has claimed to have some mental health issues, and any good criminal defense attorney would really hone in on that as part of a defense, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the main issue, according to what we've heard that's coming from the defense, is that he was trying to get some help, obviously reacted in the worst possible way. He was denied service because he was late, and this resulted in him overreacting and hurting many people.
Yeah.
The response from the police department is impressive. You can see the use of the resources they have. They were able to find him and capture him in a county adjacent to Fulton County. I think they found him in Cobb County. And the cooperation with multiple agencies is definitely very impressive, and makes you feel that when they're needed, they'll be there to help you.
Absolutely. So, we were talking about just kind of the next phases in the justice process. This person, you think, first issue for him is determining whether this guy, Deon Patterson, who is accused of killing 38-year-old Amy St. Pierre and injuring 4 other people, shooting 4 other surviving victims. So you think that the first thing we're going to see here is some questions about whether he is even competent to stand trial. If he is found incompetent to stand trial, then what happens?
Well, if the judge determines, after reviewing the evaluation from the doctors, that he's incompetent to stand trial, then they try to bring him back to competency. They'll probably send him to a hospital where he will still be in custody, supervised, and he would receive medical treatment, mental health treatment that he needs to get him to a point where he knows what's going on. He understands, he can tell the difference between what's reality and what's not, and that way he'll be able to face the charges that the state has against him.
Now, how common is it for someone to be found incompetent to stand trial?
It really isn't. It is a very high standard. It's, in essence, in Georgia, what they have to show is that the person doesn't know the difference between good and bad, that the way they acted was in complete indifference to what a normal moral person would do. So it's going to be very difficult for any person to be found to be innocent or not guilty by reason of incompetency. However, it is a different standard to determine whether or not the person is competent to stand trial, whether they know what's going on, whether they understand their rights, whether they understand the process. And that is most likely where we're going to find ourselves in this case. He might end up having to spend the rest of his life in a hospital trying to get back to competency.
Wow, that's incredible. So, with these cases, I mean, it's also important to point out that the issue of competency can change, right? So it could be that, today, or it's not going to be today, but a month from now, a judge finds that he's incompetent to stand trial, but then later on he goes through some mental health treatment, and then the judge finds that he is competent to stand trial. Is that right?
Correct. So there's two questions: is competency at the time of the alleged events, and also competency for trial. So if they find that he was competent and he understood the difference between right and wrong for the actions that he did, then they'll take him to trial.
And so then when he goes to trial, then what could happen is he can raise the insanity defense, right?
That's a possibility. He could, and he definitely will. I believe whoever his attorneys end up being at that time, that it is something that it'll be a problem if they don't, especially knowing his mental health history.
Yeah, and so what would be the legal argument about his mental capacity and how, I mean, I don't want to get too much into legalese, but it could be used to defeat mens rea, the required mental state to be charged with murder, right?
Exactly, so that he did not have the intent to commit the crimes that he's accused of, that whatever happened, did not go track through his mind as to wanting the ultimate results. But again, it is a very difficult threshold. It is very difficult for any judge to determine, yes, this person doesn't know what's going on. It's going to take a lot of experts, both from the state and the defense. It's going to be a battle of the experts to see whether or not what's going on in this person's mind gives them the requisite intent to commit a crime.
Sure. And how do you argue that? If you're this guy's defense attorney, how do you argue that he did not have the requisite mens rea to be convicted of murder?
We focus on his records, on his medical records. What has he been diagnosed with? I do believe he was in the armed forces. What was it? Coast Guard, was it?
That's right.
Yeah. So we don't know what he's been exposed to. Maybe he suffers from PTSD. Maybe he has some other genetic issues with his mental health. So his defense attorney should be able to get all his medical records and try to show that this was not him acting to hurt somebody, but it was acting because his mind he was not in control of his actions.
Well, I want to ask you also, as we're looking at this body cam video, which is so dramatic, and I know that a lot of our viewers have been looking on our website to look at it. It is right on the homepage. You can find it on atlantanewsfirst.com if you want to check this out. It is so dramatic to see the people you see the officers just doing everything they can to scour that building, running up the stairs, going room to room, and then you see innocent bystanders rushing out. And it's clear that everyone's panicked, everyone's terrified. How important is this video going to be when it comes time for trial?
Well, I think what the video shows is that the only thing it shows that he fled, right? Mm-hmm. So the state is gonna try to use that as saying that he knew what he was doing, he had consciousness of guilt, and that's why he fled.
I see.
But other than that, what the video does in fact show is the incredible response and the restraint that these officers exhibit, because at that point they don't know what's going on. They don't know who the shooter is. They don't know what he looks like. They don't know if there's multiple co-defendants.
Sure.
So they are doing whatever they can to keep people safe and at the same time secure the scene. And as we know by now, he wasn't there anymore. He had left. He had gotten in a couple of different cars and went to a completely different county. But these officers didn't know that, and they were doing everything they could to keep people safe.
And I want to ask you, I mean, you use the term consciousness of guilt, which we hear a lot in the legal context. But in this particular case, it really is important if this defendant is going to plead insanity, because part of the insanity defense is that he couldn't differentiate right from wrong. But if he ran, then it means that he knew it was wrong, right?
Or it means that he was scared. He was terrified. He didn't know what's going on.
Oh,
he might have just come back from a blackout and did not know where he was, what he's doing there, and he's just trying to get to a safe place.
And that's why you're a criminal defense attorney, because I didn't think of that angle. No, that's a good point, and maybe that's something that he could see argued. While we have you here, Suri, I want to ask you about a case that has just outraged so many people in our community. I know a lot of our viewers have been chiming in on this story. It's absolutely heartbreaking. This couple from Griffin, in Griffin. They're accused of this horrific case of child abuse. Um, Allegedly, were trying to starve their child to death. And it's such a sad story. You know, this child was about 36 pounds. And the average child is supposed to be 70 pounds, 10-year-old boy. And according to investigators, was basically, you know, had some sort of injuries, and they were left untreated. He was denied medical attention, denied food, denied access to warm running water, and so forth. And instead, what his parents did, allegedly, was lock him up in his room without any of that stuff, without any way out, even without any access to the outside world, no adult supervision, no electronic interaction. The Spalding County District Attorney actually said, you know, quote, I've tried many child abuse cases in my career, and this child, simply put, was being starved to death, and it's tragic. And she went on to say, quote, this case is disturbing, it's heartbreaking. And it really is. You know, it's Tyler and Krista Shinley, the parents, who are in jail facing numerous charges: attempted malice murder and child cruelty, involving this 10-year-old boy, their own son. So what's next, Suri? And I know you're you know, these sorts of cases are close to your heart.
Well, it's absolutely disgusting, and it's going to be a long and painful trial for everybody. First of all, I think this goes to show the importance of school. When a child goes to school, at least they have contact with teachers and peers and other people that can see there's red flags, and they can ask defects to go do a home wellness check. But in this case, this child was kept away from the community, was hidden away, and this is why there's different types of murders, and there's ranges to punishment. Because if you compare a homicide of somebody shooting somebody in a fit of rage, or in an accident, or as vengeance, the act is quick. This child has been starved for months, and if we haven't seen the pictures, but the way that the district attorney described it, it is absolutely horrible. Eventually, these pictures will be made public when it goes to trial, but it's unimaginable. I mean, the child had issues with his dental issues that went untreated and caused malformation of his face. I am just so happy that somebody saw him and gave him the aid that he needed, because it's very possible that if these defendants had seen him escape, he would have been in a lot worse suffering, because they would have punished him for trying to get some help.
So sad, so sad. And I also just want to encourage our viewers to check out our website, atlantanewsfirst.com. If you are trying to catch up on some of the details, you can find this story, you know, and you see the various charges that this couple, you know, they're accused of starving, imprisoning, abusing that little 10-year-old. And, you know, we actually obtained the 911 call where a neighbor, Good Samaritan, had reported this lost boy wandering around the neighborhood, you know, describing him as thin, with discolored skin, visible injuries. He is now being treated for malnutrition and a low heart rate. Thankfully, is in stable condition. Absolutely, absolutely horrific. I know you've shed some light on what, Suri, we expect next in the justice process. Any further look into that?
Well, this case is going to be an interesting case of finger pointing, because this is the classic case of having antagonistic defenses. As for both people, the mother and the father they're probably both going to say, it wasn't me, it was her. It wasn't me, it was him.
Really?
I was a victim myself. I couldn't talk. I was under threat. You know, the other person would have hurt me if I tried to get some help. So that's going to be very interesting, but it's still extremely disturbing. And we got to see, what about the other children? There's, I think, 4 other children that live in that home. Hopefully they are okay.
And so what do the prosecutors need to do at this point as they're building their case? What are they going to be doing? I know you're currently a criminal defense attorney, but you're a former prosecutor. If you're the prosecutor in this case, what are you doing at this point?
Well, I think they're going to do exactly what the district attorney said they're doing. These are fact-specific, record-heavy cases. they are going to get every single record that they can. This child was not going to public school or private school. I believe it was the child was homeschooled. So they're going to try to see, even when you're homeschooled, there's still group activities. Maybe they're going to interview other parents that are in the same program. Maybe they're going to interview neighbors. What could they see? When was the last time they were seen? Hopefully there's some medical records. And definitely they're going to get most of the good information, most of the good evidence from the siblings. They're going to have to talk to these children, which is going to be in itself traumatizing to them, because they're either going to be victims of trauma themselves, or they're going to have terrible guilt because they couldn't help their brother. And it's going to be a very sad case all around.
Yeah, very, very sad case. Very sad case. Thank you so much for sharing your insight on this. Hey, before we let you go, I want to ask you about another story that we're following, and this is Mableton. Of course, Mableton is Georgia's newest city, and it's at risk of being a city no more. It is in jeopardy of being dissolved because some residents of Mableton in Cobb County are now suing the city. This lawsuit was filed just days after Mableton's first ever council meeting. The plaintiffs, they're 5 residents, and they claim that the bill which created the city of Mableton and the referendum voters passed were unconstitutional. And the reason for this is they say that Mableton's ballot question and the city charter didn't just create the city, but it's a community improvement district. And the plaintiffs say the state law categorizes those as separate governmental bodies. They believe putting both in one bill violated the single subject bill of the Georgia Constitution. If the Cobb County judge rules in favor of the plaintiffs here, it would mean the creation of this new city. And, you know, is at risk, right? And the election of its mayor and the city council members would all be void. The area would then go back to being unincorporated Cobb County. Cityhood proponents would have to start all over again. So first of all, what do you think of their argument, Suri? Do you think that they have a valid legal argument?
I think it's a very legitimate argument. And I mean, the reason is that when something is put out to the voters, when it's put as a referendum, because it requires there be just one issue. Why? So we don't confuse issues. And this is the most democratic thing to do. Let the voters decide. So we can't put cityhood and legalizing marijuana on the same ballot. We got to put them separate, right? So I think that's a great point that they have, because they did create 2 separate entities. They should have been 2 separate ballots. However, at the end of the day, it just seems that the only people that are going to win here are the lawyers. This is going to be a drawn-out battle. It's going to last years, and there are many benefits to being incorporated as your own city, and there's also some drawbacks. Some of the things that people complain about is that you're getting taxed twice. You're paying county taxes and you're paying city taxes. One of the great benefits is that your city taxes are going to your city. They're not going to a slush fund for the county. They're actually going to your local community. You're going to see results. You're going to see those potholes patched up. You're going to see many benefits and resources that are going to be specific to your city. And the reality is that people voted, and overwhelmingly they voted in favor of the city, and some voters who they lost. And then the only thing they can do is go to the courts. I do believe it's a legitimate argument, and we will see what the court ultimately does. But like I said, the winners are the lawyers here.
Very interesting. I know that a lot of people, especially in Mableton, and especially in Cobb County, are going to be following the outcome of this. Thank you so much, Attorney Suri Chata Jimenez, for joining us with your analysis.
Thank you.
And again, just want to encourage our viewers to check out our website, atlantanewsfirst.com, because you're going to find all of these top stories in great detail. And, you know, of course, we're always here streaming as well. And then our traditional television broadcast starting at 3 p.m. Thanks for joining us.